Hockey town, going down to hockey town, whoa, whoa. Hockey town, take me down to hockey town, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hello, hockey fans. The Minnesota Hockey Show is on the air, and we got a special guest today. We're at PACT-TV studios in Duluth, where they're doing a lot of construction, so bear with us today. But we got a real special guest, a person that's been around hockey for, boy, longer than I. That's a long time then. Mike McGraw. He's the scout for the Boston Bruins right now for the last, 20 years, Mike?
21.
21 years, and then before that, Anaheim. So tell us a little bit where you were raised and where you went to high school and college.
Well, I was raised on the Iron Range. Hibbing is my hometown, place I loved growing up.
A Ranger.
Yeah, a Ranger. Once a Ranger, always a Ranger. If you're a 218 guy, you're always a 218 guy.
Yeah.
I went to college in Bemidji, graduated with an elementary degree, taught for 36 years, started off in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota, and then went to Richfield, Minnesota. Finished off my career there, retired in 2003. And after that, in my retirement, I still work for the Boston Bruins. And that's about it.
Okay, Boston Bruins. They're one of the best teams in pro hockey this year.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, that they changed coaches, and they brought in Jim Montgomery. He was a new breath of fresh air. They had Butch Cassidy there before for a number of years. I think, coaches kind of wear out their time in the
Right.
NHL, as you know. And I think that was a big thing. The beginning of the year, we had Marchand and Charlie McAvoy out with injuries for a long time. We weren't expected back until mid-November or later. And the other guys kind of stepped up. Their locker room is really tight. The guys get along well, and they have that new voice behind the bench. And, when you start winning, you win, and you develop that camaraderie.
Yeah, it's amazing how good they are this year. I mean, and another thing is, we lost one of our local kids that was playing for you, Carson Kuhlman, but you gained one from right in town here down the block, Duluth East High School, Derek Forberg. And how's he doing?
He's doing well. The best thing I think that Boston does is when they get a player, they evaluate him, see what he can do and what he can't do, and they put him in positions to be successful. And Derek is playing extremely well. He's great defensively. He's strong. He's tough. He eats up tough minutes, and he's on the penalty kill. He's willing to block shots. I mean, he's a great team player. So he's worked out really, really well for us.
I remember back in the beginning of his pro career when he was playing for the LA Kings, and during the off season, he was up in Brainerd, and guess who was teaching him how to box? Derek Boobgar.
Yeah.
I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Derek Forward fighting and two Dereks going at it.
Well, I don't know if he's a pugilist. He's really not, but you need to be able to defend yourself a little bit, at least have the understanding of how you grab a guy and how you stay away from his right hand.
And another thing, that's why these high school kids got to understand too that, boy, you got to get into the weight room and you got to work out and you got to get stronger, because that's the big difference when you get out of high school and move into junior. That next level, it's night and day.
Right, it is. And even from juniors to college to the pros, the biggest jump may be from juniors to college, because you're playing against 23-year-old guys. You're 18, you go in the corner, you're not going to win any battles. And people they don't get that. You can't beat up somebody who's twice as strong as you are.
Okay, back to the scouting part. You're basically the Midwest amateur scout for the Boston Bruins, correct?
Correct.
Would you call that?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's a normal week in the winter when everything's going on for you, probably?
Well, for me, it's Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sundays games. Catch 2 on the Saturday, one each other day of the night because you can only get to 1. So my responsibilities are North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin for high school. The colleges here in Minnesota, sometimes going to Michigan to help out with those, or down to Nebraska, Omaha. I pick up very few junior games now, where I used to do a lot
Right.
of them. But my situation is just cut back a lot, Jerry.
So basically, during the week before, let's go back 15 years, you would do a lot of high school in the beginning of the week up to
Yeah.
Thursday, then go down to Iowa, Nebraska, or
Right.
Dakotas or whatever, and then watch some junior hockey.
I would go to 3 games on a weekend, usually Friday night, Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and I would be in like Omaha on Friday night, say Des Moines Friday night, Kearney, Nebraska Saturday, Omaha on Sunday, and then drive home. So 600 to 900 mile weekend was not unusual for me.
So is your job all year round, or you're just seasonal? I mean,
Well, you know, some of the things is you have to take in consideration with the summer hockey is you don't know for sure how much training time on ice, not with a team, but just skating wise, lifting wise, that the kids have done. And you don't know about the opponents, whether they've been on the ice or not. So sometimes I've learned through my career, as you go in the summertime, yeah, you get an idea how the kids can play, but you really can't put a lot of emphasis on it because of those unknowns. So I basically pretty much now at the end of my scouting career and learning, my learning curve is I stay away from the summer hockey other than walk into a rink, cool off, and enjoy what's there more than working at really trying to evaluate kids.
yeah, we're going to do 2 shows with you today, and one thing, well, I'll talk in the second show is what these kids have to do to make it to the next level and what Minnesota hockey is doing, good and bad. So we'll talk about that later. But okay, let's go back. You got basically a list in the beginning of the season, and you're out there looking at the kids that you have on your list. But all of a sudden, because you're watching that one kid or 2 kids on this game, you see a kid, where did he come from? How often does that happen?
Well, it happens every year for sure. A lot of times you get a pickup from the Elite League in the fall. You go to those games, so
Right.
you understand. So you're there, and all of a sudden a kid just pops up, and it's like, whoa, where'd he come from? Yeah, it just walks out of the woodwork. All of a sudden they play harder, they get confidence, whatever it is, they step up their game. So that happens quite a bit. So that's why kids have to understand. They get disappointed, or parents get disappointed if the kid's not on somebody's list to begin with, or Central's list. It has nothing to do with how successful they can be. Just go out and play, because if you're on a team with a good guy, every scout in town is going to be there to see that good guy, and in between, they're going to watch you.
So what's really funny, we go out there, and I'm seeing a lot of the games that you are.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of high school, and so do you, I mean.
Yeah.
And we see these kids, and all of a sudden, like, you got me on this committee where we vote for Mr. Hockey. And I know my players already, what it's going to be I got my top 10 skaters already, and, I'll
Yeah.
pick the 7.
Yep.
But what's really funny is that Central Scouting comes out with their list of draft, where they see it. Now it's the midterm.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the kids are not on the same list, and I can see why, I know why, but to the hockey fan, why is a kid that's up for Mr. Hockey would not be on a draft pick if he's going to be 18 this year?
Well, simply, Central Scouting's job is to identify every player in an area that they think has a chance of being selected in the NHL draft. Okay, so with that understanding, they are looking very specifically for kids that are very high level. For example, you can be the best player on your team. You can be first team all conference and not even be considered as being a choice to go into the NHL for a number of reasons. Kids, the skating isn't good enough or whatever it is. But that's Central Scouting's job. That's what they do. And it doesn't mean that they are looking for the best high school player for the 22 season, 23 season. They're just looking for kids they can identify that, hey, Jerry has a chance, Mike doesn't. That's why Jerry's on the list.
Okay. Now, you go by that list pretty close a lot of times?
It isn't that you go by it. Each team has their own list. But you need to look at the players they have listed. And if you haven't seen them, you make an effort to get out and see them to make sure that you haven't missed somebody. And it's always good to go back for second looks. It's always good that people kind of jog your memory. And Central Scouting is, like one father said, they hand off the golden passes.
So, you like a few kids in Minnesota now, okay? Because that's where you scout. So you're telling your head scouts out in Boston about some of these players. And so they starting to like the kid too. So I see once in a while, then they bring in 2 or 3 more scouts from Boston to be with you, to see a couple games and see these kids.
Yes.
And that's more toward the end of the season usually, and playoffs and stuff like that.
They're coming in now. In fact, we have 2 guys in town tonight that'll be, watching a player. I'm not going to say who, but yeah, I mean that's the way it goes. You have your mid-season meetings in December, January. Most teams fall in that time frame, and then from there you have large discussions. You're there for 4 days, so you're hammering out lists for Minnesota, the Midwest, USA, Canada, Western League, Ontario League, and then you have your overseas guys, Sweden, Norway, Russia, and we all sit in the room and pound on one another about which kids are better than the others, and we come to kind of a consensus, and you know which kids you got to get out and see. Right.
And I noticed this is a funny year for high school hockey because I never seen so many high school kids, seniors to be, that went and played juniors and did not come back to play their high school, which is very strange to me what's going on. I don't understand it. I think kids should have fun and be with their friends. What's the hurry? If they're that good, they're going to be there, and if they keep on working on it,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I tend to agree with you in almost every case. There are some cases, I think, where a kid needs to leave if he doesn't have some type of supporting cast on his team.
Right.
Or if they don't play a really competitive schedule.
Right.
But here's the other side of that coin. If a kid leaves high school, he's 17 turning 18. He's going to go play in the USHL. He's playing against kids that are 19 turning 20 or 20 turning 21. The physical play, I don't think that 17 turning 18-year-old kid can really keep up with it, that they get worn down. The other part of that coin is, if you're really good, you have to have the puck on your stick. And if you're not playing top 2 lines, power play, one of the first 2 units, killing penalties, you're sitting on the bench watching the game. You don't learn very much. Yeah, you learn some in practice, but there's nothing to replace the competition on the ice during a game.
Yeah, so I go to a lot of these, like in the beginning of the year, I go to a lot of these junior fall classic and showcase down in Blaine, and you see all the scouts and recruiters from colleges there, and all of a sudden they see these 16-year-olds that are 6'4", and what the hell, and they're drooling and everything. And then all of a sudden, the following year, they see the same kid, and all of a sudden they look at each other, what happened?
Yeah, it is amazing. If you really watch the players, you know, some kids just blossom. They get to a point and they just can't get over the hump. They're so good, and they can't get to the next level. And then you watch it doesn't have to be a little guy or some big guy that's late maturing. All of a sudden, he's stuck there for a year or so, and then bang, he makes that big leap, and he's up at the next level, and then you really are drooling.
Right. So all these junior teams have a lot of 3 or 4 camps for tryouts where they get a couple hundred kids at these camps. And, you know, they pay their $300 or whatever for these camps to show up. And how does anyone see anything when there's so many players at these camps when they only get probably 20 minutes on the ice at the most in the whole 3 days or something?
Well, you know, the junior teams all have a scouting staff. So the kids they invite, they've all seen, they have an idea whether or not they can play. Part of it is, the bad part of it is that they need a certain number of kids to make the camp a viable camp. By that I mean they have to have enough kids to have 2 or 3, 4 teams so that they can scrimmage enough times to really get an evaluation on the kids. So for me, as working as a amateur scout for the Boston Bruins, it doesn't really pay for me to go there because there isn't much wheat and there's a lot of chaff. And for me, I want to see them after they've picked their team and their roster for the whole year is at 25. I want to see them when they get down to 28 kids. Then you get a pretty good taste of what's there.
Right. Well, when I'm at these high school games, I talk to a lot of parents and that, and some parents think their kid is better than they are, and some stay back and just watch, and either way is good, I mean. But I tell them, you know, at least go to 1 or 2 camps just to get the experience. So you know what you're getting into and that, you know, and see your level of competition and everything. And so a lot of these parents take that advice, but then a lot of parents say they got cheated or something too, you know, and they, you know, my kid didn't get any looks, and
yeah, well, everybody gets a look.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult when you've, you know, it's your child, so you view them with prejudiced eyes anyway, and you should as an adult and a parent. But it's hard to accept that Junior isn't as good as Joey. And that's what happens in those camps in the fall. But your point about go, see what the competition is like, see how you fit in, then honestly evaluate that.
Yeah, and these are kids that are having fun still in hockey. Like, you know, when you're having fun still and you think you want to play after high school, this is what you have to do.
Right. And
You
playing after high school is getting a little more difficult
Yes.
for the Minnesota kids. When I first started scouting, I mean, Minnesota kids could pretty much go where they wanted to go. But now you have, because of the influence of the National Hockey League, you have Florida, North Carolina,
I know.
Texas,
I know.
California.
You look at these college lists. What the hell?
Where did all these kids
we
come
got the
from?
whole map.
Yeah, so, you know, Arizona say they only produce 4 or 5 kids in a year, but that's 4 or 5 positions that a Minnesota kid had years ago. Texas produces 2 or 3 kids. That's 2 or 3 positions Minnesota had. Those are all gone now because of the competition.
Well, sometimes expansion helps a lot, and like especially I think D1 college now with all the expansions, and I see a lot more coming on.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big opportunity for Minnesota kids. And look how many are playing in D1 college now, and it's a lot of hard work to be playing on a regular shift.
It is. It's really difficult. Today's game, you have to really be dedicated. And you have to be lucky in a way, too. I mean, you have to be fortunate that someone sees you that really likes you. And no matter what level you're at, if you're going to be a good athlete, you need to have somebody in your corner. Like at the National Hockey League level, you need the pro scouting guy, or you need the development guy, or you need the general manager that's going to give you the extra chance. And the same thing at college. You need the coach or whatever it is to give you that little extra time to prove yourself.
No, it's funny in hockey, going out there to the games like both of us do, it's such a small world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you go like 30 years and you got more. And everyone knows everyone, but I kind of laugh when I see you pro scouts talking about the same player, but you're on different scouting. Wait a minute, don't give that information out.
Well,
but everyone knows.
yeah, everybody knows. There are no secrets in it, Jerry.
Once in a great while, a kid will, like, elitely, you say, well, whoa, this kid's 16, and let's keep a watch on this kid or something, you know. So the draft this year is in Florida. You go to every one of them usually?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
I
so
think it's not Florida, it's Nashville.
I thought it was Florida, Sunrise.
Oh, okay, that's
Either
good.
way, it's
I like the
sunny.
beach.
Yeah, I think it's Sunrise.
We were there.
But I could be wrong.
No, we were there very early in my scouting career. It was kind of nice.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. They've had a very good team the last 3-4 years, and hockey's picking up down there. And just like Tampa, we're winning some, Stanley Cups. That helps a lot. And boy, that whole going up the coast there, Carolina. Look how good their program is.
Exactly.
All the way up.
Yeah.
The Rangers are playing good, and Boston's playing one of their best years.
Yeah, it could be historic.
So you're down there, and here's another. I start laughing. I've been in about 3 of them only. So, and I'm watching. In these tables, there's about 20 or 25 of you around this table, and who has anything to say at that point? I mean.
Well, at that point, a lot of times you'll see general managers always picking up telephones because there are a lot of calls going on and deals trying to be made, trades or whatever. So if somebody calls up Boston, Donnie Sweeney answers the phone, puts the phone down, and he'll come around and ask you, what do you think of this guy if they're offering an amateur, or somebody in their development program on a trade? If do you say yes or no to this? Is it a good move for
So is he going to the scouts around the table that know this player real good? Like say it's a Minnesota kid, he would go to you?
Yeah.
Like something like
that.
He
also talks to all the full-time guys that travel the world for us. But he does come around and he will ask until he feels comfortable with the information he's getting. And then he just reads what the scouts have to say. In our business, you have to be able to develop or see talent, but maybe the most important part of our job is just being honest with our boss and standing up on your own 2 feet, saying yes or saying no and the reasons why.
And there's a lot of years that you go through this draft and you've done your work hours and hours and traveling and everything, and they don't take one of these players, and sometimes it's not because you didn't want one, it's because some other team took that player.
Yeah, and it's, in all honesty, and I say this to anybody, and I mean this in the sincerest respect for Boston. If it comes down between a Minnesota kid and a Boston kid or a New England kid, they're exactly the same kind of player, fits our need, they're going to take the kid from out there. And because they're a hometown boy and they want those kids in the lineup if they're good enough to make it, which Minnesota should be doing on the other side of the coin. So I don't ever have any hard feelings about Boston not taking a kid out of here. They need to take what's best, and if the kid is playing out there, God bless him, take him.
Okay, you got another local kid that played some good hockey, and he went to the pros and that. That's your player development person, Jamie Langenbrunner. So do you talk to him a lot since he lives down in the cities? And once in a while he gets out to a game, and I see him at the Wild game sometimes.
Well, Jamie was just promoted to assistant general manager.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's added to his duties. And Jamie, he was he was starting out as this wasn't going to be a full-time job deal, and something to occupy his time, yakety yak, and now he's he does everything. He does pro scouting. He's over in Europe. He's here at the amateurs. He's here with pros. In fact, right now we're having pro meetings back in Boston.
Really?
Yeah, and Jamie is, beyond being a really good person, Jamie is, and being an ex-player, captain of the Olympic team, all of those accolades that he has, the best attribute of Jamie is he is just a real down-to-earth human being. He's a good person in all aspects.
Yeah, every time I used to see him at the Wild game, me and him will talk for a long time about players and that. And another reason I think maybe he took that job out there doing that is that his son's right down the block at Harvard. And he's getting some playing time.
Yes, he is.
He's only a freshman, true.
Yeah. And he's our draft choice, too.
Is he?
Yes.
I didn't know that part.
Fourth rounder.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, he's our draft choice.
All right.
So, hopefully he's doing very well and things are going good for him. But, I think, Jamie's been a really good addition. He's been helpful to me after all the years that I've done this. I still bend his ear about a player and what he sees and how he sees it, because you're always learning in this business, and he has a real deft eye.
Okay. For someone that's been in hockey, player and that, and wants to get in this side of the business, does scouting to start off in scouting at one of these pro teams, does it pay all right? Or
Well, you know, it
to
depends.
start, you know.
Yeah, it depends. If you're part-time, you're not going to make a lot of money. You know, even at full-time, when you start off, you're not making a tremendous amount of money. You know, the biggest thing, if a guy wants to get in this business, everybody, you know, how do you get in it? How do you get in it? You
Right.
start somewhere. And you can't necessarily start at the NHL level. You have to start at the junior level.
Right.
And be willing to take those jobs. And if you're good at it at that level, you know, then you go look. And the people you're working for can help you with that, giving you a recommendation, etc. But you have to start somewhere. And don't worry about starting at the National Hockey League level.
Look how many of you scouts that I've met over the years that put 30 years into this or more. I mean, now you're all leaving and retiring and holy cow. And the young ones, I don't know, they're just a different breed to me. But that's okay. They have to do their own thing and they got their own philosophy in the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it changes like everything. So
Yeah, you just get comfortable. You know, if you see the same guys, you get comfortable with your rapport with them as you build a rapport and et cetera. You get comfortable. The new guys are, you know, they're as timid as we are to go over and talk to them.
Right. Like Central Scouting, I always had a good rapport with them, you know, over the years and that. And they'll talk about anything in hockey and that, you know. But what has been some of the best things that happened to you scouting that just uplifted you and that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is winning the Cup in 2011 and the trip out to Vancouver. I flew from Minneapolis to Boston to get on the team plane and fly from Boston out to Vancouver. We win the Game 7 out there, jump on the plane in Vancouver, fly back to Boston, get back to Boston, jump on a plane and come back to Minnesota. But it was you know, one of the greatest things you go through, the ups and downs of the whole season. It was just amazing. And as you got into the finals, the pressure on all of us was tremendous. And the relief when we won was even the best, Jerry.
I think that trophy, the Stanley Cup, is known more than any other trophy. Maybe that's soccer. I don't know. There's a lot of soccer out in Europe, but it's amazing trophy. And I've had guys that handle that on our show and that. It's kind of funny, some of the stories they can tell. And that. But that's our first part with Scout from Boston Bruins, the #1 team in National Hockey League now with record-wise, and Mike McGraw. And I thank you, Mike, and we'll see you at the rink.